Rosa, so you challenged me to read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, which turned out to be one of my favorite books that I read this year. It's a debut novel, and you pointed out that I am a Shakespeare fan, but one of the great things about this book is while understanding Shakespeare and being familiar with his plays is an asset to understanding the book, and you get a little bit more depth, it's still a really good book, even without that. So basically, what this book is about is you have the narrator Oliver, who the book starts with him in prison, and the cop that wound up putting him away is coming and he's asking Oliver to tell him what really happened. And he's going, and basically 10 years ago, he was going to a music conservatory and there was a murder. And basically, it's kind of telling about how, first off, it built up to how the murder happened, and then also how things kind of fell apart afterwards and how they got to the point where Oliver was convicted. And so this book was a really good mystery because you didn't necessarily have a clean ending. There's still a lot of questions that I have, and I'm not entirely sure if the story that Oliver told is in fact 100% the truth, especially since at times Colburn, who's the police officer, reminds him that he's an actor, and is he just acting it up for Colburn's benefit? And so I sit there and just with the masterful way that M.L. Rio weaves in Shakespeare to both kind of accentuate how what's going on in the book itself is affecting the characters, but also she kind of uses them speaking in what are close approximations to Shakespearean quotations to kind of emphasize how much in this bubble these characters are existing is really awesome. It's really hard for me to put into words just how amazing this book was. I love how at the end of it you're not sure really who's the villain, who's the victim, because it does play off of this idea of the tragic hero and how, there's a very thin line between Othello and Iago, and how sometimes, even though there's a crime committed, how the people that are wind up being put in jail for the crime aren't necessarily the villains, and how this idea of what makes a villain is a very two-dimensional idea, and once you kind of get this three-dimensional vision of what's happening, things get so much more complex and so much more confusing. And I think that kind of plays into the title, If We Were Villains, because she could have said we were villains, and that would have given me a completely different interpretation with with just that idea set in my mind. But instead, I'm sitting here going, is Oliver the villain? Is he the victim? Is the victim the villain? Is there a villain in this story? And so that definite complexity made this book an enjoyable read. And yeah, I would highly recommend it. It was definitely one of my favorite books that I read this year. So yeah, I'd give it a 5 out of 5 stars, no doubt about it. Okay, can't wait to find out what I'm going to be reading next. Bye!